Welcome to Lighting the Way with Beth Green and Friends. I'm Beth Green, otherwise known as Granny Rocks, when I'm playing music. Uh, this is one of the friends, but he's my husband, and so he's sitting up here with me. But this is a show where I talk and then I bring on the panel, and he's just part of it, which is delightful. And I'll be bringing other people on later. You know, this may be your first time seeing Lighting the Way. And I want to talk really briefly about the purpose of this show and how that relates to the topic that I'm introducing tonight, which is have people confused force with strength? A lot of us are watching very carefully what's going on in the world, and many of us are also upset about it. Um, at the same time, that I agree with a lot of what's going on out there, what people are feeling. Tracy on Facebook, she says, hello. Hi, Tracy. So happy to have you with us live tonight. Um, so, but what we've been looking at mostly is what is happening and how are we feeling about it? Like it's like we're looking at it happening. And what I want to do with Lighting the Way is I want to use spiritual principles and psychological and emotional understanding to get under what is happening. So we're not just looking from the outside, that we're looking from the inside. It's kind of an inside out kind of thing. So today is an example of how we want to address the issue of have people confused force with strength. A lot of us are upset with the fact that troops have been sent to our cities and there's more threats of that happening. And uh, ICE people have come on with no masks and just lifted people and put them in detention centers and thrown away the key and lost people. And there's been a lot of cruelty. There's been a lot of firings. There's been a lot of um, economic displacement as well. Now, when I say have people confused force with strength, what I mean is who looks like a strong leader or a strong person and who looks not like a strong person or leader. And why do people choose people who are clearly autocratic to begin with? Why would anybody do that? Whether or not they're disenchanted now isn't really the point. So that thought led me to this question. What is force and what is strength? Now, one thing I want to say about what force is, think about the word. When you think about force, don't you think about resistance? You're pushing against resistance and you're using your strength, perhaps, in order to overcome that resistance. So, force is really overcoming, overpowering something, a reaction, a force, a countervailing force, or so on. Well, that's what force is. And that is not strength. Force is overwhelming. Force is pushing against resistance. Now, strength, this is all my way of thinking. You may or may not agree with me, and that's fine. You can leave a comment, whether you're on YouTube or Facebook. Only though if you're on my public Facebook page, because the private page, I do not see your comments in the live show. Strength, on the other hand, is internal. Strength is something, it's like integrity gives strength. Why? Because if there's a hole in your body, you're probably losing strength because your blood is gushing out of you. If there's a hole in your argument, it will not have much strength. So, strength is something inside that has nothing to do with overwhelming or overpowering or dominating anyone or anything else. Now, you can say, well, you always have to have strength to have force. So they go together, but actually, not necessarily. People discovered a long time ago levers, right? Leverage. So you wanted to pick up something and you were too weak to do it. So you used your intelligence and experimentation and you discovered leverage that if you had something long, you could use it and use much less of your strength in order to lift something. And so there are so many examples of that. So we can use many, many aspects of ourselves to achieve something. We don't need to necessarily be strong or be forceful because forceful is always in an antagonistic position. Now, let's say the door is stuck and I can use force, I can use WD 40. Sometimes WD 40 isn't going to work. And you just have to get a whole bunch of people together and push that door because it's stuck. And that's fine. It doesn't mean in any that there's never a place for force. I'm sure there is. But sometimes you need to look at this and say, why am I using force here? What is the necessity? Well, on an emotional level, on a psychological level, let's look at ourselves. Uh, who ruled the roost in our home? I know a lot of people who had a mother or a father who was violent and clearly used force, right? They beat the children, they intimidated the children, they dominated the children. That child might very well grow up with the idea that force is strength because the other parent maybe was wimpy and didn't fight back or didn't do anything about it or couldn't resist. So you say, oh, who was strong? Oh, the one who was forceful was the strong one, not the weak, wimpy one who maybe was a nicer person. So we have these images from our childhood. Now, some people dominated the situation not through physical strength or intimidation, but because of their own strength. And we responded to their strength. We respected them. We saw them as having something internal that we admired, and we wanted to emulate them. They were strong, they were not forceful. They might have won the argument because they were right or because they saw a bigger picture. So, in that case, you might have admired a parent who wasn't using violence or physical force or even emotional intimidation. You may have seen someone who had a lot of inner strength and you may have admired that. So now your version of strength that you would want to be is you would want to emulate that person probably, or you might want to get in with that person. Oh, Karen said, hi, Beth and James. So glad to see you, Karen. I hope you heard the beginning of the show because I'm explaining the difference between force and strength and why it's so important in our world today to understand that distinction. So some people were so afraid of the forceful parent that they learned to acquiesce and they came up with that pattern of behavior of acquiescing to the bully. Some people admired it because they thought, that that was the value that, oh, that's cool. That's really cool. And then you want to be like that. Some people were just cowed. There are so many different responses and reactions. Some people are a mix of force and strength. Just push me too far. In my family, my mother seemed to have the strength because she definitely held together as my father fell apart. So she had more integrity. In that respect, that she was more of a piece and didn't collapse like he did when I was 6 years old. So I'm very aware of that difference. And who did I want to be? If I had to choose, I would rather be the strong one than be the one who fell apart, because the one who fell apart ends up being dominated. So I'm just pointing out some of these factors that have played a role in the way we think about force and strength. And if we look at our current administration, we see a tremendous use of force, physical force, economic force, threats, political force. And some people are cringing and frightened, and some people are used to standing up to that because they feel their own strength. When you feel your own strength, force does not intimidate you. Now, if somebody was standing there with a gun and he said, Beth, I'm going to shoot you if you don't sit down, I'd probably sit down. Why should I make an issue about whether I'm sitting or standing? I would have the emotional strength and maturity to realize that I didn't need to die on the hill of whether or not I was going to sit in a chair. But whether it comes to whether or not we're going to follow the Constitution or whether or not we're going to oppress people or take away people's rights, I'm willing to die on that hill. And I don't feel afraid most of the time. In a moment, I might feel afraid because I'm a human being, and there's a natural survival mechanism that would say, "Oh, this is really scary." And then I'd say, "Okay, so what? Let's keep going." And I know that from experience that I will do that. So when we look at what's happening, I would say that our rulers today are extremely weak. They don't have integrity. They don't have internal strength. They don't have the strength to think, to care, to negotiate, to work with people. They feel small and they need to use force for whatever reason. Their experience has taught them that they need force in order to protect themselves. They're just weak and scared. And that's what we see a lot of the time. And a lot of the people who voted for these people feel weak, and they said, okay, well, if I can't be weak, can't be strong, at least because they're thinking of strength as force, right? I at least can be aligned with that person, right? So if the king says, oh, you are my friend, suddenly I feel safe because I am under the protection of the king. So my safety, and then I can walk around acting like I have all the strength, but I don't have any strength. I only have the protection of the king. So all of these factors, it's kind of subtle when you think about it, all the factors that relate to why people might have voted in an autocrat or an autocratic government, and why some people are not fighting back. They have their reasons. Now, from a spiritual perspective, I look at it very clearly as force is not a positive force in the world. I would rather be in collaboration, understand people. We need real leadership that understands the needs of the moment and helps us to move towards meeting those needs. That is leadership. That is not force. Force is if you don't do it, it's like what's happening now. Oh, you're going to shut down the government because we won't negotiate with you. Well, if you do that, we're going to fire everybody and we're going to go after you and we're going to go after all of these. We had a rather shocking demonstration of this yesterday, I guess it was, when we had the Secretary of War and the President of the United States browbeating our military leadership, telling them that we should not have to pay any attention to rules of engagement, which means we, Americans, can commit war crimes if we want to, and that it's perfectly okay. Well, I don't think so. They would not do that. They would not say that if they didn't believe they could get away with it. If we were a small nation somewhere, they would be afraid to go around trying to bully everybody. But because we happen to be a wealthy nation with a lot of, with a lot of military and so on, they take chances that on on doing things that are really illegal, unethical, and immoral, because who's going to stop them? And so they're saying that, they're talking about, sending troops to the cities. They've already started that. So this is the blatant disregard for the use of force. And some people are going to cheer. And we can have judgments about those people, which is understandable that we would. We could be upset about those people, which is also understandable. But rather than just judging and being upset, why don't we try to understand the people? And not only to understand them, but to understand the part of ourselves that has also used force. Are you telling me that you, if you were a parent, have never said to your child, go to your room because you don't know what else to do? You're using the force, the power of your position in the family, which is you control the money. You can beat the child. There's a lot of reasons. Uh, you may not even be trying to understand what is going on with that child. You just, and some people do try to understand. And, sometimes the child is just trying to test its own force. You see, that's really interesting. I wonder why the child is imitating that behavior of trying to overpower other people, children who bully other children, and so on. Then there are the women who have been browbeaten their whole lives and don't have faith in their own strength, whether it's physical strength or emotional, moral strength. They grow up in societies where they're told that they're not valuable. I mean, we just our Pete Hex has just told the military that we have to get rid of woke. And what's wrong with the women? The women can't carry their weight, right? This constant put down is going to erode people's confidence. When you have no confidence, you have no strength. You may use force, or you may just suck up to the king, but neither of them is strength. So now I would like to open this discussion to my friends tonight. And first we have, of course, James Maynard, who is sitting right next to me. And then we have Lizzie Trehard.
Hello.
And then we have Todd.
Hi there.
Hello there. Welcome.
Can you hear me okay? My nice microphone is not working.
Oh, it's very loud.
Is it? Okay.
Much louder than Lizzie, but I don't know whether you're fine and she's weak or she's normal and you're loud. So if somebody would like to put something in the chat about the sound, just let us know. But yes, you are very, very clear.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, who would like to comment?
I'd like to share. I've noticed in my own behavior that when I try to apply force, I'm usually scared. So I try extra hard to be extra forceful, to power through, you know, to overcome obstacles, to succeed, wherever it may be, whether it was in my work or in school or in various situations at home, to power through out of a feeling of insecurity or fear.
Yes, that's a very important point. And Tracy said the sound for all is fine. So I'm delighted to hear that. Thank you, Tracy, for being our ears on Facebook. Um, yeah. And I bet you tell yourself you're being strong.
Oh, yeah. Oh, especially when I'm angry.
Yes,
When I'm angry, I feel strong, but it's not really strong. It's
exactly.
just anger.
Exactly. And that
And,
means you're
and
out of
I'm
control.
out of control. I've
Right.
lost it.
And when you're out of control, do you have strength?
No.
No. See, that's what people really need to understand. If you do not have control over yourself, you have no strength. You're just being pushed around by your hormones and by your fear, as James is saying. So that's a very good point, James. Who else would like to share now? Todd.
Sure. Well, I'll start with a little historical context. So my father was on the force side of things. He didn't try and understand. He didn't try and, you know, look inside the person and understand. At least not with us. I don't know what he did in his workplace because I wasn't there. But um, yeah, he used force a lot, and so I learned. It took me a lot to unlearn that isn't the right that's not effective in the long run. One of the thoughts that came to me as you were talking about this is like a country in decline. When you have to use force and you're not negotiating based on strength and based on cooperation, then you don't have a future because there's not any kind of inspiration that comes from that force. It's to me at least, and that's what I see. Like all those leaders, like Martin Luther King, they had something that they were standing for that united people and brought people together in hopes for something greater, like all of us, his famous speech. And I think that's what's missing today. None of our leaders, we don't see our leaders offering that kind of leadership. But getting back to the personal level, that has been my problem also in raising my children. And we worked to understand, and I think we did a pretty good job, but there are many times I went over the line into force, especially when my wife is gone and my kids, they kind of baited me. They were testing out their limits.
I
And
mean, I
yeah,
don't know anybody parents, so I'm not being arrogant about this. Right?
yeah. Yeah. So I definitely did. I don't like that I did that, but my relationship with them is different now, and I'm not playing that game anymore. And I'm really trying not to pull out the force card and instead use that strength, that inner strength, looking inside, like you said, trying to understand the other person, trying to understand myself, trying to understand the situation. So that's what I have to say about it. Yeah.
Do you feel stronger as a result of that switch?
I do. I do. I feel stronger, and I'll use the word cleaner. I don't feel so like when you do that, at some level, it just doesn't feel good. You might have won the battle, but the war, so to speak, isn't, it's not one that you want to win. It's so in the long run, you're kind of, I felt like I was shooting myself in the foot by doing that.
Yeah.
And if I look at the dynamic between myself and my wife, I think my wife used more of that strength rather than power. And that
Mm.
led her to have more credibility with our children,
Mm.
because
Mm.
I too often resorted to force. So I've seen the outcome, the effects. I can't undo everything I've done, but it did cost me in the realm of emotional connection. And so I'm very aware of the cost of it as well.
That's a really great point, Todd, that it was a cost to you.
Hmm. Right.
And people don't necessarily see that. When people are cheering on the bully,
Hmm.
the bigot, uh, the misogynist, they don't see that they are eroding their own souls
Hmm.
because deep down inside us, we know that we are one. It's like when a parent beats a child and they have to look at their face. Sometimes the parent is stricken with guilt.
Hmm.
Sometimes it makes them try to justify it even more.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that children don't try to use manipulation or other forms of uh, coercion on the parent. And if the parent is thin skinned and feels weak, they will blow up. The
Hmm.
weaker I feel, the more reactive I am to when someone is trying to be angry with me or is trying to dominate me. So I can see it on so many levels and so many sides that it's the weakness that makes us, our inner weakness actually makes us weak. and uh, looking inside, trying to understand our reaction, having compassion for ourselves in all of these situations. But still, we can say, we don't believe in force, except on those occasions where you have to push that door open and the WD-40 isn't working. So, for instance, uh, probably Hitler had to be stopped with force.
Yeah.
If you see that somebody is beating a child, you may need to report them to Child Protective Services, who will take that child away. They will use the force of the state in order to stop that person. And in those cases, what else can you do? You have to stop the harm. So in that moment, you can use force. You have to. But when force is your knee jerk reaction or what you think is preferable, then something is wrong inside. Something has been broken inside your soul. And you need to heal and forgive yourself, but heal. So, Lizzie, would you like to share?
Well, really liked what you just said as far as, when we realize if we're used to using force instead of strength, understand why that is and bring healing to it. That's comforting. I wish everybody could see it that way.
Mm. Well, I wish everybody would watch this video, right?
Um, I grew up with a parent who was would use force more with his voice and sometimes with his, spanking, but didn't have the understanding or didn't have the support to find out, well, why are you doing this kind of thing? So yeah, I grew up with that example of using force.
And
Um,
so what did you choose?
I probably chose force,
Mm,
not realizing it. Trying to make things happen, trying to force things to happen the way
mm,
I wanted it to.
mhm. That's really good, Lizzie, because there are so many different ways of using force. Maybe you weren't the kind of person who was going around beating everybody up, but there's other ways to try to force things that don't look physical.
Mhm.
And that's a good reminder to us. So, does anyone have anything else they'd like to share before we close our show for the night?
I would just like
Yes.
to add that to me, strength is standing true to one's values. You talked about the word integrity, having the sense of what you stand for and standing in it.
I agree with that, and, so that's a great way to end this show. Please come back next Wednesday at 6:30 PM for Lighting the Way with Beth Green and Friends, and we never know what we're gonna talk about. And, I invite you to join us, uh follow us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube channel, listen to our shows, spread the word, tell people about us, even share videos if you want, because we need to start looking deeper into what's happening. So, because at this moment, do you feel as polarized as you felt maybe this afternoon?
No,
No.
Right.
You're not going to get duped into falling into the trap. You're going to stand your ground, stay centered. I mean, that's the way I feel, at least, out of listening to what you had to say today. And
Good,
yeah.
good. That's really important because otherwise, I mean, we're just angry.
Mhm.
And there are times we have to fight things, but we have to fight from strength rather than from reactivity and force. So bless you. Thank you so much for coming. And we hope to see you guys again soon, whoever you are. Uh, Come live if you can, and then you can comment yourself. And so in the meantime,
bye bye.
going to say good night. Okay, and I'm trying to do the music. I'm trying to force the music to go on, and it's not listening to me. There
There
we
it
go.
is. Exercise.